At 12 years old, my mom and stepdad told me we were going on a little trip. There was no reason for me to suspect anything. Life at home wasn't perfect, but no kid that age expects their parents to abandon them. That day is etched into my memory like a scar, vivid and raw. The summer sun was glaring as they dropped me off at my biological dad's house. I sat in the back seat, watching the world blur past the window, confused and uneasy. My mom, Emily, kept turning to smile at me, a strained, artificial smile. "It's just for a little while, Jackson. Your dad will take good care of you," she said. A little while? Those words would echo in my head for years. The thing is, Ryan, my biological dad, had never been a big part of my life. My parents split when I was young, and Emily married Ethan when I was 6. From then on, everything revolved around Ava. Ava, Ethan's daughter, was the center of the universe. She was always sick, hospital visits, specialists, whispered conversations. No one ever told me what exactly was wrong with her, just that she was fragile and needed quiet. If Ava cried, the house stopped. If she was sick, Emily stayed by her bedside for nights. I tried to understand. I really did. But I was just a kid too. No one stayed by my side when I had nightmares, and no one paused the world when I caught the flu. The drop-off was hurried. Ethan stayed in the car, glued to his phone. My mom walked me to the porch, hugged me briefly, like I was too hot to hold, and whispered, "We'll be back soon, baby. I promise." Ryan opened the door, confused, like he hadn't been told I was coming. I glanced back at my mom, desperate for some reassurance, but she was already heading back to the car. She didn't turn around. The car pulled out of the driveway, leaving me standing on the porch, clutching a small bag of clothes and my favorite comic books, feeling hollow. Ryan cleared his throat awkwardly. Come on in, Jack. I guess you're staying here now." Living with Ryan wasn't terrible, but it wasn't home. He was a mechanic, always smelling of grease and fast food. He wasn't cruel, just distant. "You need anything? Let me know," he'd mutter before disappearing into the garage. For months, I waited for my mom to call, for Emily to return, for Ethan to show up with an explanation. They never did. It didn't take long for me to realize they never would. At 12, I didn't understand why they left me. The silence was unbearable. Some nights I cried myself to sleep, clutching an old family photo like a lifeline. My mom's smile in the picture looked like a stranger's. Ava sat on her lap, pale but happy. I hated that photo. I hated Ava. Then I hated myself for hating her. Middle school was a nightmare. I was the quiet kid in hand-me-down clothes, carrying a chip on my shoulder. Friends were rare, and Ryan didn't pry. By 16, I had built walls so high, even I couldn't see over them. Ryan and I rarely spoke. I worked part-time at a fast food place, saving every penny. At 18, I moved out. Now I'm 22, living in a modest apartment, managing warehouse inventory, and finally feeling stable. My best friend Mason has been my rock since high school. He's the type to show up with beers and crack jokes at the perfect time. I'm even seeing someone, Olivia. She's smart, kind, and looks at me like I'm not broken. For the first time, I'm in control. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from an unknown number. "Jackson, it's your mom. Can we please talk? It's important." I froze. After 10 years of silence, she suddenly wanted to talk? Mason noticed my blank expression. "You okay, man?" I showed him the text. He frowned. "What does she want now?" "I have no idea." My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure. Part of me wanted to delete the message. Another part, the wounded 12-year-old part, couldn't let it go. I finally typed, "What do you want?" Her reply came instantly. "It's about Ava. She's very sick. Please, Jackson, meet with us." That name hit me like a punch to the gut. Mason read over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. 10 years later, and now they want to talk? That's messed up. Anger bubbled under my skin. What did they expect from me? Why now? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them. Curiosity, closure, maybe just to say my piece. 3 days later, I sat in a dingy diner staring at the door. Mason had begged me not to go alone. "They don't deserve your time," he argued. But here I was, waiting for the ghosts of my past to walk in. When Emily and Ethan entered, time seemed to freeze. My mom looked older, gray streaking her hair, her smile awkward and hesitant. Ethan hung back, avoiding eye contact, looking smaller than I remembered. "Jackson," Emily said softly, her voice trembling. "It's so good to see you." I didn't respond, just motioned for them to sit. The silence between us was heavy, broken only by the hum of the diner's fluorescent lights. Finally, I spoke. "What do you want?" Emily flinched but recovered quickly. We owe you an apology for everything." I let out a dry laugh. "An apology? You abandoned me at Dad's house like I was garbage. 10 years, Mom. You didn't call, didn't check if I was alive." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes fixed on the table. Emily's hands trembled. "You don't understand, Jackson. We didn't have a choice. Ava was... Ava!" Her name tasted bitter. "What about her?" "She's very sick," Emily said, her voice cracking. "The doctors don't think she has much time left." Her words hung in the air like a weight. I felt nothing. "And what does that have to do with me?" Ethan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need your help." I laughed bitterly. "Help? You want me to comfort her? Play the long-lost brother after a decade of being nothing to you?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming. "No, it's not like that. The request is clear, and I will rewrite the text entirely, restructuring it to ensure it is distinct from the original, while maintaining the same word count, meaning, and flow. It's complicated." That's all she said. Her words hung in the air, her eyes full of desperation, silently begging me to trust her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. After what felt like an eternity, I rose from my seat. "If you want anything from me, start being honest. Until then, I'm done." "Jackson, wait," Emily began, but I was already pushing open the diner door. Stepping into the crisp evening, I let out a shaky exhale I hadn't realized I was holding. My mind was a whirlwind. Ava was dying. My parents had come back, needing something, yet they refused to say what. I didn't know whether to feel rage, sorrow, or just nothing at all, perhaps all three. That night, Mason showed up unannounced with a six-pack and his usual questionable advice. "So, let me get this straight," he said, sprawled on my couch with his feet propped on the coffee table. "They vanish for 10 years, then suddenly reappear because Ava's sick again?" "Yeah." He popped open a beer, handed it to me, and raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't ask what kind of help they need?" "They wouldn't say. Just that it's complicated." I stared into the beer can, trying to sort my thoughts. Mason snorted. "Sounds like manipulation to me. You're not falling for this, are you?" I took a long sip, my gaze fixed on the wall. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should just let it go, but I can't shake the feeling they're hiding something. They've lied to you your whole life," Mason said bluntly. "You think they're gonna stop now?" The next morning, another message from Emily buzzed through my phone. "Please, Jackson, if you won't talk to us, at least come see Ava. She doesn't have much time left. Ava." Her name struck a chord I hadn't expected. I had spent years blaming her for what happened to me, but the truth was, she never asked for any of it. She didn't ask to be sick. She didn't ask to be the center of their world. And now, she was dying. Could I ignore that? Without telling Mason or Olivia, I decided to go. I didn't want them to talk me out of it. The hospital was eerily quiet, sterile halls, muted footsteps, and low voices. I stood outside Ava's room for what felt like an eternity, my hand frozen on the door handle. What was I expecting? A heartfelt apology? A miraculous reunion? When I finally pushed the door open, Ava was sitting up in bed, staring blankly out the window. Her hair was thin, her face pale, but she still bore a faint resemblance to the girl I remembered. She turned toward me slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" The question hit me harder than I thought possible. "I'm Jackson," I said awkwardly. "Your brother, well, stepbrother." Her frown deepened, like she was trying to piece together a puzzle. "Oh," she said flatly. "They told me you might come." She didn't sound happy. She didn't sound anything. "They said you wanted to see me," I ventured, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged. "Not really. I didn't even know you existed until yesterday." The air left my lungs. "What?" Turning back to the window, she said matter-of-factly, "They never talked about you. Not once." Her words crushed me. My parents, my mom, had erased me like I never existed. My voice trembled. They never mentioned me? Nope, she said plainly. I only found out yesterday because Mom was crying about how you wouldn't come. Crying? That was laughable. Why are you even here? Ava's voice cut through my thoughts. They said you didn't want anything to do with us. I don't, I snapped, sharper than I intended. Taking a breath, I tried to steady myself. I didn't come for them. They said you wanted to see me. Well, I didn't. Her tone was blunt, dismissive. For a moment, I just stood there, feeling foolish. What had I hoped for? Some hidden connection between us? A bond waiting to be discovered? I realized then that Ava was as much a stranger to me as I was to her. Goodbye, Ava, I muttered, turning toward the door. Wait, she said suddenly, her voice softer. I hesitated, glancing back. What? Why did they leave you? The question pierced deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard. I don't know. You'll have to ask them. I didn't hear from Emily or Ethan for days after that. I didn't care. I buried myself in work, desperate to forget the whole mess. But Mason noticed the shift immediately. You look like crap, he said, sliding into the diner booth across from me. What happened? They never told Ava about me, I muttered, stirring my coffee aimlessly. She didn't even know I existed until 2 days ago. Mason blinked in disbelief. Wait, what? I nodded. They erased me. For 10 years, I was dead to them. Ava had no idea she even had a stepbrother. Mason let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Man, that's next level screwed up. What's their angle? I don't know, I admitted. But something's off. I can feel it. You think they're lying about Ava being sick? I hesitated. No, she's definitely sick. But there's more to this. I know it. Mason leaned back, arms crossed. Then find out. If they want you involved, make them spill everything. That night, I caved and texted Emily. Meet tomorrow. I want the truth. Her reply came instantly. Of course. Thank you, Jackson. We'll explain everything. The next day, I met them at a park, a public place. I didn't trust them enough to meet anywhere private. Emily and Ethan sat nervously on a bench when I arrived. I didn't sit. I stood before them, arms crossed. Start talking. All of it. Emily opened her mouth, but Ethan spoke first. We made mistakes, Jackson. We know that. But Ava's illness, it drained everything we had. I stayed silent, staring at them, waiting for the real truth. Emily's voice trembled. After we left you, your grandfather passed. He left us some money. Enough to help Ava for a while. Something about her tone made my skin crawl. What does that have to do with me? She flinched. We used your inheritance. The air felt like it had been sucked from my lungs. You stole it? My voice cracked, my fists clenching at my sides. Emily started crying. It wasn't like that. Ava needed treatments. It was her only chance. I stared at them, fury boiling in my chest.